Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Frontiers of Knowledge. The biggest problem facing the world today as far as the mental health is concerned is that with the change in the demographic structure, dementia, Alzheimer, Parkinson's, these diseases are a formidable challenge. And most of all is the challenge of Alzheimer, which leads to dementia. As a matter of fact, the first stage is Parkinson's, second is partly Alzheimer, and the third and the final stage is dementia. Until today, doctors have failed to identify the exact cause of that disease, as well as the absolute treatment of that disease. However, the marvels of science do not end ever. The constant research and the work done by the researchers in the labs ultimately does produce the result. And now it's known, it has been proved, that the process of iron oxide, or the oxidation process, that destroys the metals outside in the world, destroys the brain as well. You go and buy a car, you look at the underside, whether it's rusted or not, and if it's rusted, you don't buy it. But what you do when the brain is rusted? And the brain is rusted shows the latest research. And now the doctors are wondering whether we can remove the rust from the brain, because the research has pinpointed iron as a possible driver for Alzheimer's, and not only Alzheimer but all the degenerative diseases. The presence of iron in the blood is very important. If you don't have enough iron, your hemoglobin will be low. You'll be anemic, you'll be weak, you'll be fatigued. But there's one issue, that even if iron is high in your blood, it can lead to oxidation in the brain. And previous research used to show that Alzheimer is a buildup of amyloid protein fragments in the brain, which are broken down in the healthy brains. But an unhealthy brain cannot break down. And there was no way you could reduce amyloid levels so far. So the researchers thought that it's not amyloids, but something else. And now the latest research, as reported in the journal Brain, shows iron might be the major culprit. Iron has a special property that allows it to exchange electrons, which are crucial in allowing our bodies to generate energy from oxygen and fuels such as sugar. So iron and oxygen generate energy in the body. But in the brain, when iron and oxygen meet, they result in rust, iron oxide. However, what happens is that the same process which gives you energy in the physical body destroys your neurons in the same way iron metal rusts in the presence of oxygen. The researchers have used MRI techniques to measure the iron levels in the brain. And they found that the people with a high level of iron, in combination with high levels of amyloids, suffered a rapid cognitive decline. But the people with a higher level of amyloid and low level of iron do not suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia. And thus the old studies that amyloids were responsible for Alzheimer is overthrown. There were tests continued for 5 years. And the 5 years trial have produced that an anti-iron drug can slow the progress of Alzheimer's. Not treat it, but it can slow. But that's a breakthrough. You can't deny it. Given the data from the study, it seems reasonable to hypothesize that lowering of the blood iron level in the brain would slow down the progression of the disease. But how far? And then, can we prevent it? This work basically was done in the University of Melbourne, in the Department of Neurosciences and the Florence Institute of Neuroscience. They say that in case you can identify the iron level, and you can do it by MRI, before the age of 60s or 70s, when the onset of Alzheimer increases, if you know it beforehand, you can delay the onset of disease. Naturally, the research is at the next stage. They cannot say they can prevent it absolutely, but they can reduce the intensity, and the progress can be slowed down, which in itself is a big achievement. Even flu vaccine doesn't prevent you from catching flu. You can still catch flu, but if you have a vaccine, the impact of the flu would be less. It would not be as intense as it could have been had you not been vaccinated. The same is true here. If the presence of iron in the brain can be reduced by some process, some medication, without reducing the presence of iron in the blood, then the onset can also be delayed and maybe prevented. And one thing is very clear. It's not about food. The doctors and the researchers have been very clear that the fact that people take iron-rich foods like spinach and others does not mean that if you take less food of having iron, it will have any impact. The food is helpful for your blood flow and for increasing the oxygen in the body. But the iron content mysteriously in the brain has a negative effect. So you should not cut down iron in response to these results. And the doctors are very clear that iron in the blood is no indicator, absolutely, of the blood or the iron in the blood of the brain. For that, only MRI is required. There is absolutely no evidence that the amount of iron you eat and the amount of iron that is measured in your blood has any impact on the iron in the brain. You see, nobody can deny that iron is important in generating energy. But now it has proved to be a double-edged sword. It can also cause cell death, including the death of the neuron cells in the brain. And when the neuron cells are destroyed in the brain, the process of degeneration sets in. Brain has billions of cells. But if a sizable number, a large number of cells is destroyed, it can't function the way it used to function. And slowly and steadily, that's why we call this a degenerative disease. Basically, rusting of the metal is exact replica of rusting of the brain, continuous and progressive. In the brain, iron and oxygen are very dangerous combination. They have been used very successfully in the physical world to generate energy. But the characteristics that make iron useful element becomes highly toxic in the brain. As a matter of fact, this is another sort of lesion. A study was done in 2013 which shows that among a group of participants aged 70 and above, 30% had no symptom of dementia, memory loss, or failing cognitive function. And we know Alzheimer leads to dementia. Amyloid buildup was clearly there. So if you had high levels of amyloids, you got Alzheimer. Now it has been revealed that amyloids are a factor, but not the major factor. When the oxidation takes place, when the rusting takes place, then the amyloids become more potent and become harmful. So to prevent degeneration, to prevent dementia and Alzheimer's, it's necessary to cut down iron qualities and take some anti-rust medication. Recently, they also recruited 117 more participants, which had out of them 56 a very high, elevated amount of amyloid. It was measured by the PET scan, and then it was seen that those with just high levels of amyloid did not suffer any loss at all. And this, as I said earlier, this experiment was continued for a period of 5 years. The decline in the memory, the decline in the logic, the decline in the cognitive aspect is the location of the iron in the brain where it interacts with oxygen. The iron is rusted and the brain is rusted. A high level of iron in hippo matters. Hippo, the largest animal, which stores short-term memory, is correlated to the mental decline. High level of iron in temporal and frontal lobes associated with language was correlated to the poor performance of language tasks. The question arises, can an anti-iron drug work? They have tried one drug called Defripron, and they have seen that when this anti-iron drug was taken and it reached the brain, it was effective in slowing down Parkinson's disease, which is the same, controls your movement disorders, and is also associated with the brain iron. Now, if Defripron has been successful, that means there can be some effect of anti-iron medication. And the senior researcher, Professor H.Y. says that reducing brain iron would definitely lead to a routine treatment of Alzheimer and slow down Alzheimer's. I don't know, but then what the researchers tell us, and I would believe because of the veracity of the institutes involved and the long time span, I'm always wary of any research which is completed in a period of 6 months or 8 months. But a research which has been conducted over a period of 5 years, at random sampling and the continuous same sample being used, there is some validity to that. And when, after identifying the main cause of the iron oxide in the brain, they also saw that Defripron was successful in reducing and controlling Parkinson's, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that Alzheimer's and dementia, the biggest blow to mankind, can be slowed down, can be halted, stopped. Unfortunately, they cannot be reversed. Once iron oxide is there, when the metal is rusted, you can't bring it back to metal. But you can slow down the process by using anti-rust treatments. You do it with your cars, you made it. So, doctors have got to find something which prevents rusting. First from rusting itself, and then from the process of resting continuing. This new research is path-breaking, and hopes are kindled. They become much more that maybe the dread of dementia, Alzheimer, may be a thing of the past. And human beings, if they are living longer, would also be saner for a longer time, would not be deprived of being what they really are, human beings. Thank you.